Hello to you. Hello to you. How about you back there? Hello to you. And welcome to another episode of 100 Words or Less, the podcast. Our listenership is growing. I was just saying hello to the new people who have been checking in on this show as of late. So thank you. Because, since this thing has been going for close to 3 years now, I forget that sometimes everyone doesn't listen to every episode, because I do. I exist in it. And, sometimes you got to greet the new people. So it's like, hey, what's up, new kid in class? Thanks for joining up. Maybe you can check out some of the other classes that we've been doing for a few years before this. So anyways, thank you to the new people who are joining us. We got a lot of special stuff at this show today. So the guest this week is Calvin Philley, the vocalist for an amazing punk, hardcore, independent music band called Xerxes from Louisville, Kentucky. This was a conversation I was not expecting to have. He is a young gentleman in his early 20s dealing with some really dark stuff in his life. And we get into it. And towards the end of the conversation, you'll hear a shift in something that I've honestly never done in the podcast before. So that's a tease. If I've ever heard of a tease, then that is definitely one. But I'll get to that in a minute. Let's talk about some stuff. I have a little interview with someone else that I'll reveal in a moment, but let's get some business pleasantries out of the way. Propertyofzach.com, our media sponsor. For the next probably 5 or 6 episodes, I'm going to have to mention this because, self-promotion, that's just kind of in our natures as humans. And obviously in this age of social media and other platforms, this is kind of what you do. I used to sing in a band called Taken. We broke up in about 2004, have done some reuniting stuff over the past couple of years, and then we realized, dude, we don't really need to, say we're broken up anymore because, no bands break up anymore. And we're a prime example of that. So, because we like each other as humans. So basically, we decided to kick this thing back into high gear. We are going to be releasing a discography on December 9th. Pre-orders should be going up any day now. So by the time you listen to this, you visit otherpeoplerecords.com and you may be able to pre-order it. This thing's super limited. I think we're only pressing about 500 copies. It's on double LP. It's our entire discography. It's remastered. Just great new art. A lot of stuff. If you ever cared about this band, then you will be excited about it. If you didn't care about the band, I would recommend you just jump on to any streaming service and see if it's for you. I'm not going to try to convince you otherwise. So, and we're also playing a show in late December at the Glass House in Pomona with a great band called Misery Signals. So if you're in the Southern California area, I highly suggest you check it out because it would be nice to high five some of you in person. I love when I meet people who listen to the podcast. It's so cool. That's a perfect opportunity for you to come. You could just be like, yo, your band sucks, but your podcast rules. And I'd be like, hey, thank you. Or vice versa. You're like, you know what? Can't stand your podcast, but love your band. Cool, man. Or you hate both. That's fine. We'll still probably be able to find some common ground. So anyways, there's that. Some people have been very nice and leaving very positive reviews recently. Just want to give a shout out to Uncle Oliver from Canada. Thanks for popping into iTunes and saying this very nice thing. I feel like I connect with the artists and develop a great understanding of where these musicians formed their roots and how they've managed to succeed. Talk about a pull quote. How succinct was that? Perfect. So thank you, Uncle Oliver. Again, U.S. people, step up. Leave some reviews. Come on. I'm encouraging you. The international community is taking over this show, but maybe that's a good thing. Maybe we don't need to be number one anymore, America. I think I probably just got on some watch list because I said that. But anyways, I digress. So we're going to do something special. I am entertaining the idea of kind of doing a little check-ins. So as you well know, for those of you that are familiar with the program, I obviously talk to a person for about an hour and we go a lot of different places, usually throughout their lives and kind of their highs and lows and everything in between. But there are sometimes I just deliberately gloss over large issues because I'm not trying to be a sort of commentary on what is happening in music as we speak. Of course, we talk about that. And of course, there are elements of that happen organically in our conversations. So I got approached by a good friend. He does a label and podcast called Bad Christian. And for those of you that are interested in probably some of the funniest commentary on sort of religion and Christianity in general, go find their podcast. It's spectacular. They are releasing records as well. there's a band that they're releasing called The Classic Crime. And you can just Google Bad Christian or go to badchristian.com and you'll be able to find out all the info you need on this new release. But they pitched me like, hey, do you want to talk to the singer of this band? And I was like, well, for one, I've got no personal connection to this band at all. Like I've never really, I saw them maybe once back in the day, but they've done a lot of interesting things in regards to like obviously Kickstarter campaigns. And, you know, they by no means were ever a big band, but they've existed in this sort of like weird world. You know, obviously it is a Christian music leaning thing. But yeah, so needless to say, I use this conversation as kind of just a little barometer for what a band of this nature, who is like, by all stretch of the imagination, is a very mid-level band. Like they're not big, but they seem to have captured a very specific audience that is supporting their music. And so I try to concentrate on that discussion point. And so anyways, he said some very cool and insightful things that I wanted to share with you. So here it is. The Classic Crime is releasing a new record on Bad Christian Music. Like I said, if you want to check that out, just pop onto the site. But here's my discussion with Matt, the vocalist of the band. So pop in, check it out, and then I will intro Calvin, and then we'll be talking to him. So look at this. 2 interviews for the price of 1, and you're paying $0 for this, so you're stoked. So obviously, like The Classic Crime, you've been doing this since 2006, correct?
Technically, we started touring in 2006, but we were signed in 2005, and we've been a band since 2003. So
okay,
it's been about 10 years of legitimately doing The Classic Crime.
Right. I like how you use the words legitimately.
Right. Exactly. If you haven't played a show yet, it's not legitimate.
No, it's true. It's true. I mean, obviously, at this point, it's like the band has shifted to a different beast than what you guys were when it was like, all right, dude, let's be gone 300 days out of the year and really just nose to the grindstone sort of stuff. What kind of motivates you to obviously kind of bring The Classic Crime back into focus and kind of why do this now? Obviously, that's kind of why I'm interested in where your head is at, because obviously so many bands go through so many different iterations of it. And then anytime a band kind of quote unquote comes back with some semblance of a new release or something, it's always kind of like, oh, okay, what's the reasoning behind this?
Well, we still very much love making music and putting out records. And, when we first were without a label after Tooth and Nail, we didn't know what to do. And so I had all these songs, and I thought, why don't we just see if we can release these independently, and we'll do a Kickstarter for the budget and everything. And we raised 286% of our goal as far as people picking up T-shirts and CDs in advance to support our recording. So that was kind of like a shot in the arm, like for years we were just kind of working based on we were contractually obligated to make another record, so here we go, and we're contractually obligated to tour, so here we go. But this was kind of a different thing than that. A lot more responsibility, a lot more, we take a lot more ownership in what we do, and it's been awesome to just have real direct connection to our fans and not have an intermediary, sort of liaison telling us kind of what we need to do. Not that we ever needed to follow any specific rules. We always had a lot of freedom with our music, but something about taking ownership and doing it yourself is different and in a good way.
I see exactly what you're saying. I mean, it's funny because obviously anytime anybody does a self-funded record these days, there's such a basically it's become a cliche in many terms because, and when I say cliche, I don't mean that in a negative connotation. It's just a lot of people, because the music industry in and of itself is so transparent now, a lot of people look at the quote unquote goals that are set for bands for being like, all right, we need X amount of dollars to do these things.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, a kid in Florida that records himself is like, dude, you guys don't need $25,000 to record or what, that sort of stuff.
Sure.
Did you receive any sort of, not like you probably saw anything directly, because I imagine people weren't emailing you being like, Matt, you're a fraud, what are you doing? But did you guys get feedback?
We did. On our first one, we raised $30,000, which was our goal, overnight, so in 24 hours, and that I got a little bit of press and media attention,
Mhm.
which brought out people, rolling their eyes, and people who weren't necessarily fans or never really backed us or never really cared to. There was some critique from them saying exactly that. Why would you need so much money to record? You're just lining your pockets. They're cashing out.
Right.
They don't really care about it anymore. And then, of course, from our perspective, that was half what we spent to record any other of our previous records on the
Mhm.
label. So we thought we were shooting it pretty low, based on we thought we could produce similar quality with half the money, and doing it all ourselves, and kind of playing the label in a sense.
Right.
So, yeah, there was a bit of pushback from people, but ultimately we didn't really have to defend ourselves. Our fans kind of got on and set them straight in the
Right.
comments. So,
Yeah, yeah. No, that's true. Because I do think there is a sort of natural inclination, especially, I think you made a comment there. The people that probably were like, oh yeah, like classic crime, like whatever, they're just kind of another band or whatever. And then once they see kind of the motivated fan base that obviously wants more material from you guys materializing, that's when detractors can come out and be like, oh, well, that band sucked. Why are they getting, X
yeah,
amount of dollars?
exactly. Yeah, and it's funny. I'm guilty of the same thing. I'm guilty of looking over in someone else's bowl and seeing that they have more than me, and sort of being a little bit bitter, about
Yeah,
it. Like, why
sure.
not us? And you can get in that mindset when you're in a band, because we're all competing in the same arena for a lot of times the same listener, the same type of listener. And there's only so many hours in a day that one can listen to music, so you're sort of competing for the airwaves a little bit. And once you get into that mindset, it's not fun. It's better to go, what can I do for the people who care for us, and the people who already are going to be in it for the long haul, and how can we keep those people happy? It's not as much about expanding or getting something from touring, or connecting with other artists, or schmoozing with the right industry people. It's
Mhm.
just about connecting with the people who are already there. And that's kind of where we're at as a band. We can do this, for as long as it seems like a good idea. I
Right.
mean, it's
As long as it's
uh,
as long as it's supportable. Yeah, yeah.
sure. I mean, if people keep saying, "Hey, yes, I'll throw $10 on your next record," before I even hear it, because I think it's going to be worth it, then, as long as people do that, we can continue making more records, and we hope to, do that for the sort of a more functional model than, like you said, being gone 300 days a year, being able to produce music and pick and choose, when we're able to play live, and those sorts of things. It's just a benefit of being independent that we really appreciate.
I see it going this way for obviously so many bands, and it is refreshing where it's like, yeah, you don't have to, because I'm sure, like, I mean, obviously, like I was saying earlier, where it's like when you guys were so active, where it was like, yeah, you're on the Atticus tour, and yeah, you're doing all these things, and it's like, I'm sure there was a point where you yourself kind of hit a wall in regards to, man, I don't even feel like I'm functioning in a real life situation. You're just kind of constantly being removed from from
Yeah,
everything.
yeah. You become part of a small sect of the population, and you start relating more to long haul truckers than people who work regular 9 to 5s. And yeah, it can definitely have a psychological effect when you're constantly on the move and constantly going, and you're never in one place too long. Um, it has an effect, and there's positives and negatives, but the biggest thing is, when you get a little older, and many of us are married and having kids. At that point, it's not just about the effect it has on your psyche as a human being, but it's also about the effect on your family. And you want to be there for the milestones with the kids, and you only get that shot once. So,
Yeah.
it's definitely like we feel like older.
Right.
So we're having kids, and we're starting families, and so, having freedom to, pick and choose, and not being contractually obligated to tour, is really nice.
It's that notion of, obviously, when you start a band, you don't have the idea in your head that it's like, oh, this thing is going to be, whatever, it's going to last for 5 to 10 years. Like, it's an indeterminate amount of time. So it's like, as life starts to happen to you and then you become an adult, you have to reckon with these two
Sure.
polar opposite forces. And so,
Sure.
like where you're at personally now, and like obviously the function of you being independent and, working with, Bad Christian and all these other capacities, like is the art that obviously you're creating, do you feel liberated in a lot of sense, where it's like you said, because you don't have to, kind of be a part of that machine of like,
Sure.
okay, yeah, here we are. We have to, it's our second record, man. We got to follow it up because it's been 18 months since our last one. Like,
Sure. Exactly. Well, and when the record budget comes down and then you debate about who's going to produce it, and then you set aside studio time, it's all very cut and dry. You get 4 to 6 weeks to track a record and then it's done. Whereas our first independent release, Phoenix, came out in 2012. That took about 6 months to make. And I would say that it's probably, ask any artist or musician what their favorite thing is. It's the latest thing they've done. But so that's kind of cliche of me to say, but I do like that record as far as the production goes more than others, because I had the time and the freedom to just spend extra hours on it. Mm-hmm. We weren't under some time crunch, and that's kind of the DIY aspect too. Is when we produce it ourselves, or when it's all in our control. It's not like we need this deadline. It's like, no, we can spend the time needed to make it exactly as good as we'd like to, and since we have control over everything, we can just push the release date back.
Right.
So, yeah.
Right. And you don't have to send it up the chain of like 7 other people who are just going to be like, Matt, that's a terrible idea. You're
Exactly.
just like, well, I already made that decision. Sorry.
Yeah. Yeah. So there's a lot more freedom in that regard, just being able to work a lot longer on it and make it good.
Yeah. You're more flexible, and while obviously the kids that have pre-ordered it may give you flack for that. It's like, hopefully, like you said, the fact that you're at least a open communicator in regards to the way that you conduct yourself, and it's like, well, hopefully they'll understand it. If not, then of course I'll refund your $10 to $20 or whatever. It's like,
well, I'm definitely like communicating a lot, on Kickstarter. I'm posting updates and stuff like that. But everyone's always like, take your time, don't rush it. So people have been really gracious with, especially how long this new record's taken to come out. We've spent about 10 months just tracking it. So
right.
It's taken even longer than our full length of all new originals took. And these are, rewritten songs, from the last decade.
Right. Yeah. You're not working from, 0%. It's like, but it's still taking longer because you have the time to do it.
Exactly. Well, and this time I'm doing it all by myself, whereas before I had an engineer help, I had an editor help with drums, and this I did everything. I took it all on myself, and I probably bit off more than I could chew, and then I got carried away. They were supposed to be acoustic songs, and then now they have, strings and auxiliary percussion and full drum set, and they just became something else that is completely different, which I'm really happy with, but it started out as just mostly supposed to be an acoustic project, which should be simple in
theory,
in that regard. Yes, in theory. But then what happens is people, they back you with a lot more money than you expected. And so you have a lot more time to work on it. And then you feel responsible to produce something better than they expected. So,
yeah.
So I'm in here like re-recording songs because I don't like how they sound.
Right.
Trying to make them good enough, worthy of the support.
Yeah, no, I could see that. Yeah, there definitely is that expectation. Like, I mean, I'll equate it to, obviously, it's like anytime anybody decides to contribute to my podcast, even if it's like $5, I'm like fawning over them. I'm like, thank you so much. And it's like, you do feel that obligation when someone has obviously kind of cut through the noise of everything, like exactly what you're talking about of earlier when you were saying, it's like, yeah, you're competing against so much stuff out there. Technically, you and I are in absolute competition. I want people to listen to this podcast, and you're like, dude, drop all that audio stuff. How about you just listen to some music? And it's like, but I do understand what you're talking about. You feel the such an obligation to people that decide to, invest in something. Because, I mean, to be frank, it's like, obviously, like, the Classic Crime was never, by any stretch of the imagination, like a huge band. You guys appealed. No. You guys appealed to, I wouldn't even say a specific type of person, but it's like you guys had, moments, but you never, crossed over. But then the people that obviously are supporting you now are the ones. It's like, well, those are the most meaningful, like you were talking about. Well,
and we've begun the transition. I mean, years ago, I took over our Facebook in like 2008 because I was like, we need to like connect. We feel like too far removed from our base. Everything's filtered through the label, and that's what we kind of came to expect, was just send out press releases and send these really generic messages via social media, and that all started to change in about 2008. And I think what it is you start a band and you sort of set yourself up as larger than life. You take these cool pictures and you make these cool videos and you dress this cool way and you have these cool moves on stage, and that's all really cool, but it really kind of elevates you above people, which I guess people do have a natural bent to want to idolize or worship people. But that whole thing was always really uncomfortable for me. Like, I never really felt like I could play the part well enough, or that I was really worthy of that, or I was cool enough. So it was great to see just the industry sort of shift to a more personal connection, with Twitter and with blogs, and you could really kind of understand people more as people, as opposed to just rock stars or that whole fame game thing.
Right.
So it's been cool to finally come to the point where it's like, now we're fully independent and we have this relationship, and I'm just a dude and you're just a dude, and we can talk about music and we can enjoy this relationship of me producing and you listening. That whole thing, that dynamic, is a lot more just real, I think, and less pretentious than the I field your fan mail and don't respond back.
Yeah, totally. You're a constant repository for positive feedback, but it doesn't go both ways.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Well, yeah, I really appreciate you letting me into the psyche of obviously why you're doing what you're doing now, and then obviously the context in which you can be creative here in the 21st century, right?
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thanks, Rev.
no problem. So there you go. That was Matt. Like I said, I'll be kind of doing some experiments there, because I do think that there is value in talking to a person about a very specific experience that I don't necessarily need to stretch out over a hour-long conversation. So there you go. Like I said, The Classic Crime. Visit them on every social media outlet you can possibly imagine, from Facebook and Twitter, and then they have a new record out. Thank you very much, Matt from The Classic Crime and Matt from Bad Christian Podcast, for bringing that to my attention. So here we go. Calvin. Xerxes are an incredible band. I've liked what they've done for a very long time. It's been very interesting to follow them, because basically they released a full length on No Sleep Records. This was maybe 2011, something like that. They kind of captured a feeling of what was happening in independent music from bands like Touche Amore and La Dispute. Like, that's when those bands started to really take hold in the independent music scene. And Xerxes was by no means a big band, and they were kind of like coming up on those heels. And then they made decisions to tour with bands that didn't sound like them. It kind of cost them. It kind of burned them out, and they really wanted to shift into something they defined as like either more interesting musically to experiment with. So they released a 7-inch that kind of hinted at where they were going. And then now they have a new record out, again on No Sleep Records, called Collision Blonde. And from the moment that I heard it, I was like, dude, these guys are onto something. It's got a lot of cool elements to it. It still has that aggressiveness that they're obviously known for, but doesn't lose any of the tendencies that sometimes bands that are aggressive sometimes forget, like, space in songs and nuance and textures. So this record's amazing. So I was like, all right, I got to talk to Calvin. I've only met him once or twice, but man, we really got into it. So I'm going to let the conversation do its own talking, and I'm going to shut up. And here's our discussion with Calvin, the vocalist of Xerxes. marker of success for most bands is usually the handsome or pretty lead singer.
Yeah, I really work on my hair a lot.
Yeah, dude, that's probably the best way to start things off. I mean, music is secondary. Everything else falls a distant third, but looks, number one for bullet.
Yeah, 99% hair, 1%, well, a 0.5% music, and then another 0.5% glistening sweat.
Right. Well, it was funny because I mean, being from Orange County and playing in bands that shared the stage with 18 Visions and all that sort of like it was very interesting to see the the attention that was paid on the fact that wow, these guys have a pink streak in their hair, and it was like it's such a, we could talk about that for hours, but we won't. That's not why we're here, right? I usually start these things off with my own personal sort of entry point to, you, the band, that sort of stuff. So it was, I mean, when we had you guys on Sound and Fury, that was my first time I saw you guys play live. But it was, I mean, Chris from No Sleep obviously showed me your guys' stuff beforehand. And it was one of those things where it was like, I was immediately taken by what you guys were doing because, obviously this wasn't a time when, bands like Touche and La Dispute, like that sort of, for lack of a better term, I like to classify that as intelligent hardcore.
I could do that, yeah.
Yeah, so like that stuff all started to take off, and you guys came in, around that same time, and it was one of those things that I feel like the sound that you guys were trying to accomplish with your earlier stuff was very distinct to your region. Like it was very. It had elements of, obviously, like I was saying, all those other bands, but because you guys were from Louisville, you had all that weird indie rock stuff going on as well. Did you feel like that was, I mean, your guys' proximity to all that sort of music really played an influence on that early stuff?
Yeah. One of the most influential shows I ever went to was Modern Life is War headlining their second to last show in Louisville, and Black Cross opened for them, or was like their direct support in Louisville. And Modern Life is War and Black Cross, and all those guys in Black Cross, and all the bands there, and had a history, so I think that's almost what a lot of us took, like me and Will especially were at that show together, as like best friends and trying to start a band, and like that show kind of melded us into this, like we wanted to be like Modern Life is War, but you can't help your influences. And Black Cross was one of those bands that I remember the first time my brother showed me Art Offensive, so I guess Ryan Patterson with Black Cross and Young Widows, or Ryan and Evan, both have a kind of indie rock guitar sound to go with their hardcore bands and their rock bands and all of that. And Will is very, very influenced by that. And has always been influenced by that in his guitar tones and the way we write songs and stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's impossible to really help the fact that, yes, we are from Louisville. I don't know if it's necessarily true, but I feel like it is, that we're a little more isolated than other folks around the country because of our city and kind of where it is. And that kind of melts the sounds of a lot of bands from here, definitely.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. I never thought about Louisville as an isolating place, but there's major cities that are obviously within, 3 to 4 hours that you guys can obviously play to. But there isn't much within the context of all ages music. Like there's no, in every time that I played and went through Louisville, it was always like, I contacted Ryan or Evan and they pointed me in the right direction of the most appropriate all ages venue that was happening at that time. So there was no consistency. So I could see the isolating nature of just like, oh, I guess this is what we're doing for this year.
Yeah. Yeah. And like right now, I would say that as far as all ages venues go, we're slim pickings right now. It's been tough. I have people contact me trying to get all ages shows booked, and I don't even know where to point them in the right direction for. Yeah. Just because there's not really a space right now. But the other thing about Louisville that kind of isolates us is just the fact that there are these cities that are 2, 3, 4 hours away. They're all larger markets. It's hard to get good headlining bands to play Louisville nowadays. Just because the markets that are around us we're in competition with them to get these bands, and we just don't really have the power to to pull them in.
You don't have the infrastructure where it's easy for bands to be like, oh yeah, you play that 800 capacity venue every time you go through Louisville. Yeah. Sure.
Yeah. You look at a map and you see Indianapolis, you see Nashville, you see Cincinnati, you see even like St. Louis before you see Louisville. If you're trying to go across the country, which is sad, and I would love it to change. But that's just the way it is, and it kind of it creates a kind of self-reliance amongst individual bands in Louisville. I think that we really try to take care of things ourselves and not worry too much about the networking aspect of trying to get noticed by touring bands and all this stuff. We try to go out there and make it happen ourselves a lot of the time.
No, that's a good point. Yeah, you lean on each other in ways that maybe other bands in other areas don't have to, because they can just immediately go out on their own. Yeah. No, that's true. That's true. You yourself, were you born and raised in Louisville or the Midwest, or where did you come up?
Louisville. I grew up in the suburbs in Louisville.
Okay.
My dad's actually from Eastern Kentucky, and his family's all from the South. And then my mom is from Long Island. I don't know why if we ended up in Louisville, just because my dad's job. But I love Louisville. I've always loved it. I love Kentucky. I can't really see myself living anywhere else, honestly.
So what was your dad's job that brought him down to Louisville?
He works for GE. He's just a 9-to-5 office guy.
Okay.
Orders parts for refrigerators from Japan.
Sure. Yeah, he's in the trade. And so, do you have brothers and sisters? And what was your family structure like growing up?
I have an older brother, and then I have a little brother and a little sister. And my older brother played guitar in a band called Mountain Asleep for a very long time. That was kind of a band that when I was in high school was kind of ruling the local scene in Louisville. We had a huge, people were just really into Screamo. That was the time where that whole Screamo revival thing was kind of happening, way before the emo revival, I guess.
Right.
So there's a ton of these Chicago, Midwest, Milwaukee, Grand Rapids Screamo bands, and Mountain Asleep was Louisville's part in that, I guess.
Sure.
And so I was going to his band. I was a freshman in high school, and I went to every single one of his band's shows until they broke up, pretty much. And they were actually part of the reason Xerxes was able to get a foothold in Louisville, because they would let us open their shows every now and then. It was a lot of fun. We were just kind of best friends. And now Ben, who plays drum for us now, was playing drums for Mountain Asleep back then. So it's all come back full circle, kind of. And my little brother is 2 years younger than me, completely different. He's I guess he's a junior in college now, and he plays Division I college baseball for U of L.
Oh, wow.
Throws a 95 mile per hour fastball. So,
nice.
So I think I'm 5'11", about 150. He's 6'3", probably 200 pounds. He's a big boy.
Slightly different build.
Yeah, and both him and my little sister both got straight A's all through high school, where me and my older brother were punk rockers, drinking and smoking weed and not doing shit at school. Probably I didn't even go to school my entire junior year. So suffice to say, me and Jake are kind of we were the rockers and they were the good kids.
It's so funny because very, very rarely does it kind of split down the middle like that, where it's usually, I mean, obviously since your older brother kind of, ushered you into the music world, it's kind of interesting to see that your other two siblings were nah.
And we get along so well. And my little brother Jonah, he's not a total jock idiot. He's cool as hell and likes a lot of really good music. Me and Jake are always trying to cure up his walk-up song when he comes in for relief innings and stuff during baseball games.
Dude, that's amazing. That's amazing.
Yeah.
So what is your current pitch for his walkout song?
I don't know what his is currently. I haven't talked to him in a while. It's one of those things where he didn't want it to be something that was so obscure that nobody would know it. So we were always trying to. I am pretty into good hip hop, so I was always trying to get him to put a Roots song or something like that on his. Or a Kendrick Lamar song for his walk-up song, just because that's at least people will know that and get excited for it. seldom takes our suggestions.
Right. Well, dude, I mean, honestly, like you're doing this because obviously you have such a passion about music, but that, I mean, that is a crucial component. Like you get so many people stoked if a good song is played for a walkout, like no matter what sport.
Wild thing from like Major League,
dude,
you know?
so true.
Shit.
And so yeah, as you alluded to, you were a terrible student in high school. You didn't care. So like, what sort of person were you? Were you kind of like quote unquote, burnout punk kid, where it's just like, whatever, dude, like I just need to get out of here. Where did you find yourself?
It was kind of one of those things where, like, I say I really sucked at school, and that's true, but there's some aspects that I was actually really good at. I mean, I aced my AP English exam and all that stuff. Like, I was like the star student writing essays and shit like that, and my creative writing class and all that stuff. All those creative classes, I was really good at, and I really put a full effort into. But like math, social studies, pretty much anything that didn't involve writing creatively or like analytically, just didn't work for me, and I couldn't handle it. And I say smoke weed, but I didn't really smoke weed that much. I don't even really like smoking weed. I just got really drunk my entire junior year of high school.
Okay.
When I wasn't going to school. And then I came back for my senior year and got straight A's just to like say fuck you. And then I got a full ride to college after that. I don't know. That was when we were playing a lot of shows around that, and really like hitting like the local music scene very hard.
Mm-hmm. And
so I was just kind of like school was kind of the thing that it was just like, I don't even care about this. I'm playing music. Like, I don't need any of you people. I'm not even friends with any of you people. It was always just go to school and then get out of school and you go to band practice or go to a show or go like trespass somewhere downtown, It was always like, I was always the youngest person in this little like punk sect that we had going, this like DIY punk sect that we had going on in Louisville. That was really cool, and it was a really cool time. But it was never like, I was never cool in school. I was always kind of a nerd, and like nobody understood. Like you could ask somebody if Calvin was a punk rocker, and they would probably be like, "He's into punk rock? What is that even? I don't know." So,
right. So you're very disassociated with the high school experience because you were so dedicated.
Nobody even really knew who I was.
You flew under the radar intentionally.
Yeah.
You obviously mentioned the fact that you were, really into sort of the creative aspects of it and writing and stuff like that. Yeah. I mean, I can identify with that. I 100% was in the same boat as you as far as like math was so secondary and English and all that stuff. Where was that love like fostered from? Like, did your parents encourage you to read when you were younger, or how did that kind of manifest itself?
I don't know. I was a smart kid for some reason. Just like in school, when it came to reading time when I was really young, I just really enjoyed that, and that's just what I did. And by the time I was like a freshman, like by the time I was in middle school, I was reading like entire books just like on my own outside school all the time. I would like read before I fell asleep every night, like a total nerd. And so that's what I loved, and that's just kind of what happened. And then, I don't know, I've always kind of been like a little morose, angsty soul. So like when I was in middle school, I was like, I'm going to write poetry and da-da-da. And then in high school, it got to a point where it's like, well, no, I don't have to be like this angst bubble, but I can like do some positive things for myself and maybe for other people by writing what I feel. And people like that. My teachers liked that. I received a lot of like positive attention for it. So I just kept doing it, and it felt good for me. And I like eventually like I was like in specialized programs for writing, like summer programs and stuff like that. And that's how I got the full ride to college, was for being this big shot high school writer.
What was your primary form? Were you doing poetry? Were you trying to write fiction? Were you
I was writing a lot of poetry.
Okay.
I've always been open to doing other things, but poetry just made the most sense because I was in this band and the lyrics were just poetry. So I just kept with that kind of thing, Like at this point now, like I'm starting to take the poetry and turn it into prose, and then I just got a nonfiction piece, I'm working on something right now for a zine that's just going to be like a nonfiction account of me getting really drunk and things that occurred after that, I guess.
Okay.
I mean,
sure,
normal kid stuff.
Yeah. So who were the poets that you looked up to as far as inspiration and stuff like that?
That's the one thing, is I don't really read a whole lot of poetry. I was reading a lot of Cormac McCarthy in high school, which to me, his prose is very poetic, and he's still one of my favorite writers. So that's kind of where all that came from later, when I was like starting to write this really like, I wouldn't want to say deep, but it was just like I got cryptic and like too in my own head, like for a while. And that was, I guess, from reading Cormac McCarthy. And I just wanted to use all of these words that I learned, all these like fun, like $10 words that I found in a book by an old guy,
Like when you do love English, when you do start to discover different ways to express yourself and you're using these words that you have some grasp on, but you really shouldn't be using them, but you still are like, dude, I'm going to impress someone by doing this.
Yeah. and like, when I like, especially when I was like in high school, I was just like, I'm gonna string together all these words that are so like full of meaning and and like, but what does it really mean? Not a whole lot,
Yeah.
And that's kind of what I learned from like later on, like taking like a creative writing class in college and doing those like programs over the summer, like the university and government programs to develop young artists and stuff,
Yeah. You went to Western Kentucky, correct?
Yeah, for 1 year.
Okay.
For one whole year.
That's it. But you got a full ride for that, right? Like you were saying?
Yeah, I got a full ride. And that was right after my parents got divorced, too. So I was actually getting paid about $1,300 a semester to go to school, which, like, now I think about it, it's just, like, so ridiculous that I quit because my parents had just gotten divorced and my mom could file for the most amount of federal aid possible because she was pretty much living below the poverty line after all that.
Okay.
I was making a lot of money to go to school.
Right. Did your parents divorce? Was that because obviously you were older? Did that affect you? Did you have a reaction?
Oh, hugely.
Okay.
Yeah. I guess so. My parents got divorced when I was like in high school, like in the middle of high school. It was one of those things where like it came as like a weird shock. But like a weird shock in the way that it was, I could have seen it coming, but I just didn't understand how to.
Okay.
I guess in the way that you are born into a household where you have a mother and a father, those are your only parents. That's your mother and your father. Those are the people you live with for your entire life up until the point that they separate. And once they separate, it's like you kind of realize once it's spoken out loud that, oh wow, like the entire time I've been living, this was always going to happen. These people didn't necessarily have a healthy relationship, even though I just assumed that it was. I turned that back on myself and was like, well, then how do I know how to create and live in a healthy relationship? And that was, at this point in my life, I was like dealing a lot with like wanting to fall in love and wanting to be with somebody and wanting to be with somebody forever and all that stuff. And like, I came to this like point where I was like, is that even a possible thing? Like, is that a thing that happens? Is that a natural thing? Like, what do I do? And I think I'm still even struggling with that because I'm 22 and like don't know anything about anything, but other than I would like to love somebody. That seems like a nice thing to do, and I'd like to be loved back because that feels really nice. I think I felt it before. But I mean, it fucks you up when your parents go and get divorced.
Sure.
That's just a thing that happens.
So, but it sent you to the space of you looking at yourself, whether or not you could, I guess, receive and give love in a long-term.
Yeah, like it kind of made me start to think about whether I even had the capacity for it, as if it were like a learned trait that like you pick up from watching your parents, who are supposed to be in the society that we live in. They're supposed to be two people that love each other forever, kind of. They're married or whatever, Like I grew up with that feeling of like, well, my mom and dad are in love and they're going to stay together forever. That's what I assumed, because I mean, they were married, whatever. And I didn't know any better that people just grow apart, But it was like a very shitty feeling to be all of a sudden like, well, what if I'm fucked up? Like, what if because I watched them for my entire life and that was my model to go by for how to live with your entire life with somebody and they failed, am I going to fail as well? That was kind of what was going through my mind. And I feel that still, I guess, especially since I'm single and can be pretty messed up. I've been called sleazy recently. I don't really agree with that, but
sleazy in the sense of it's difficult for you to be monogamous, or sleazy in the sense of you are involved in other nefarious activities?
Now that you ask that, I haven't really thought about it that way, but I would say that, like, I would love to be monogamous. I would very much enjoy that. I just haven't entered a relationship with somebody in a very long time that seems as interested in that as well. You know?
Sure.
I don't think it was entirely well thought out to call me sleazy.
Right.
And so I'm kind of mad at a person that said it behind my back. But
Sure. Well, I don't think. I mean, even honestly, even if it was,
I am involved in other nefarious activities, but like I don't even think they know about that. So let's just.
Yeah. Hey,
you don't even know me that well.
Right. Hey, that hurts. How about you have the whole picture before you call me sleazy?
Like I don't necessarily if you had the whole picture in front of you and you still felt the same way, that's okay. Whatever.
So then, as you're matriculating and attending Western Kentucky, I presume obviously the band was a large reason for you not continuing your education. But did you enjoy the college process and kind of being able to dive into your studies from that perspective? Was that just torturous for you, and so the band was an easy out?
A little of both. I'm very excited to go back to college one day. I'm 100% going to do it. That's going to happen because I do really enjoy studying. I enjoy reading, all that kind of stuff. But I was kind of torn the entire time I was there. First of all, because I'm a punk, and I was in the fucking honors program there, which was a bunch of these goody two shoes, normal ass kids that I just could not. There was no common ground between me or anybody. Pretty much anybody in my peers, all these kids coming straight out of high school, love studying and love being smart and love being nerds. Whereas I just want to read books and write and play music.
Sure.
That wasn't really my thing. And I would love to go back there and be a scholar on things having to do with music, writing, and reading, but I didn't want to go to an astronomy class. I didn't want to go to an algebra class, I thought that was what high school was for.
Right.
So I felt a little cheated because people always told me the entire time, you're going to go to college. During high school, what my therapist told me was, you're just ready for college. You are just past this high school stuff and you're ready for college. But here's the thing, Calvin, you have to put your head down and get through this to advance to the next place. And I need you to do that. So you just do that for me. I was like, okay, therapist, you might have a point.
Right.
So I did that. I get to college, and then it's just like high school, but worse because I'm with a bunch of nerds and there are no skaters there.
Right.
There's no other punk kids. It's just a bunch of nerds.
Sure.
And it just I was just surrounded by squares, it felt like. So that sucked.
Right.
But yeah, I'm very excited to go back to college. It was torturous to be in Bowling Green, Kentucky, in the middle of bumfuck nowhere, while my band is all in Louisville, practicing all the time, and then sending me the demos.
Yeah.
Most of the 7-inch that we did, the split 7-inch that we did with Midnight Souls,
Mm-hmm.
I wrote all the lyrics for that in Bowling Green while the rest of the band was in Louisville, and we recorded that on a weekend that I came home.
Right.
So that sucked. So once we got over to I actually took a week off from school that spring, my spring semester of that year, because we went south by Southwest during the U of L spring break where everybody else was in Louisville going there. So I had to take a week off during their spring break to go down to South by. And that's where we met Chris and then started the whole roller coaster with No Sleep, where we have ended up here that after that spring semester signed, and then I decided not to go back to college. So did Will and Dylan and James and all of them. And so we just decided to try to do this full time.
Sure.
Instead of going to school.
Sure. Yeah. So you decided, at that point, you obviously decided to structure your lives to where, you would work jobs that were easy to leave and facilitate touring and that sort of lifestyle from that point.
Yeah. I went back home. Well, actually, I was still in Bowling Green after that for a girl like an idiot. But then once I got back home, I was just working in a coffee shop and going out to work as much as I could. And I was so poor.
Sure. Well, that's part of the lifestyle, like you were saying, that you build for yourself because you want to be creative, and that's
occupational hazard.
Exactly. It's part and parcel. So in preparing for our conversation, I noticed in multiple interviews you've mentioned you enjoy the touring lifestyle and you enjoy the traveling aspect of it, because I do think that there are a lot of people, a lot of people that look to a band and are like, oh, tour, that's such a cool thing, and the idea of like, you know, you said it perfectly in my mind, where you were just like, well, yeah, it's kind of like a paid vacation in a way, where, you know, I mean, paid in the sense of you get $5 a day or something like that, but
if you're lucky.
Yeah, if you're lucky. So do you, now that you've obviously have a decent amount of touring under your belt, does touring still provide the same sort of excitement, or has your views changed of it over time?
There's the matter of if you are successful or not. We did like over 150 days on the road right after our Home is a Deathbed came out that year. We didn't have any money. The tours weren't very successful at all. And we pretty much started hating each other because of that. And that's very, you know, that'll happen.
Yeah.
It was great to travel the country, but the shows and the money and all of that is not meeting or exceeding your expectations. It can get hard, really hard. And it's not easy in the first place, because traveling that much in such a limited time is very difficult. But I still, to this day, would do it all over again if I could. Except for the shoplifting and getting arrested part.
Right.
But,
where I don't think I know that story. Where you were shoplifted and arrested and like actually put in jail overnight for that?
We were not put in jail.
Okay.
That's lucky.
That's good.
But we did have, I decided not to because I'm an idiot, did have to go to court a little, like all the way out in Virginia after, like Will and Evan went to Harrisonburg, Virginia one fine morning to go to court and get lectured on why they shouldn't shoplift like they don't already fucking know.
Right.
We were just stealing candy bars because we were hungry and poor from a gas station in Harrisonburg, Virginia, and got like totally caught. There was a cop in plain clothes just for that occasion.
Yeah.
Like in case there's like some 19-year-olds stealing candy bars. So yeah, we got nailed, and that turned into like a $650 fine for me later. Long story short, don't shoplift.
Right.
Then that was like the tour that was kind of like the nail on the coffin that we needed to like take a break and start over.
Mm-hmm.
And some of the members quit after that tour just because it was really, really hard.
Yeah.
But to that end, like I said, I'd do it all over again. And I'm very excited to start doing it more and more again because I believe in this record and I believe in the guys in this band. Way more than I ever have in anything I've done before.
Being a person that's obviously so close to, you know, the business aspects of what you do as a band, but like the effort that you guys obviously have put into not only writing and recording this record, but to obviously, like you said, actively take a, you know, longer break to where, you know, you stepped off the treadmill to be like, all right, we got to figure out what we want to do with this band. So the conscious decision that you guys have had with this LP to be like, okay, we're going to differentiate ourselves from either, you know, the bands that we've been constantly lumped in with, not because you dislike them, but just because you want to have a fresh take on it. Was that, you know, in planning everything, was it one of those things where, you know, do you guys feel like this is like, all right, well, we're going to try this, and if this is received, you know, terribly, or it doesn't make any sense, like, and people are just kind of like, oh, whatever, another Xerxes record, that's it. Is that kind of your last sort of try from that perspective, or is it one of those things you guys are just like, well, this is what we're doing from here on out?
I think that this sound that we're working with right now is just a natural progression, especially with the member changes. Will definitely wanted to start writing more simplified guitar parts once James quit the band, and he didn't want to have a second guitarist anymore. He just wanted to have one guitar, simpler songs, and to that end, I think more accessible songs. We kind of felt like the post-hardcore sound that we were kind of doing a lot of, it was starting to feel immature to us. It started to feel like yeah, Modern Life is War was a great band. Yeah, like Touche Amore is doing amazing things. Yeah, we all liked At the Drive-In once. But like at the same time, like I liked the used ones too, and I also really, really liked like AFI when Sing the Sorrow came out. And not to knock any of those bands because they are very, very good, and I still like those records, but they don't sound as mature to me anymore, and they don't resonate with me as much anymore as kind of like. I don't know. I listen to any Joy Division record right now. Instantly hit me right where it hurts. So that's kind of where we're at now is that this is just what we're doing, and we're going to play music no matter what, just because we like doing it with each other. We like playing music with each other, and that's just what we do, and we can't stop.
Yeah.
If it isn't well received, like maybe we tone it down on touring and don't try to push ourselves too hard that like we eventually like run ourselves in the ground. Where we're at right now is we really believe in this record, and it seems like what we've released so far is getting received pretty well across the board. I feel more excitement about what we're doing than in years past, both within our ranks and just coming from people that we've never even heard from before. And I think also just the music's going to be more accessible, going to reach a wider audience naturally, just because people aren't going to be like, oh, that sounds like Screamo, I don't like that, even though it is heavy music, it's not so polarizing, I think.
Sure.
And that's kind of like where our bass player Joe's coming from. Is he's played in a lot of indie rock bands, he's played in a lot of punk rock bands, and Ben can pretty much play anything, anytime. And then Will's just gotten into his whole 80s goth punk thing, and I just like music in general. So that's kind of just what comes out naturally now.
Sure. It also seems too that you guys, from obviously the addition of, Ben to your band, and then how closely you guys have worked with Max Moore, obviously, and all like a lot of the visuals that have accompanied the band. It seems like you guys are, for lack of a better term, it's like, and I think this is due in part to the Louisville scene and kind of leaning on each other. It's like Xerxes kind of feels more of like an art collective, as it were, than kind of a band. And I think that's what kind of makes, that's what makes what you guys are trying to do, more unique from that perspective, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Like we started the thing not that long ago that we called, like we would always say we were keeping it in the family. Ben doing art for us, Ryan Patterson doing art for us, Ryan Patterson helping out with like some audio recording stuff that we do. Will doing sound for Coliseum when they go on the road. We're all with Chains being a band. That's all us keeping it within our family, our group, the people that we trust. And so that matters a lot to us because we're all very anxious people, and we're not so quick to trust. We've been burned before, so we stick to the people that we trust. So we know that we can get what we want out of it, and that also creates that kind of collective feel. Kind of reminds me of the like Bay Area, California, Screamo like art collective kind of thing.
Oh, sure.
That was going on for a while. That I always thought that was so cool, and it creates a sense of full circle of this is music, this is writing, and this is visual art, and so you're giving people a ton of stimulation, and that's what people want. That's why you listen to music. That's why you look at art. That's why you read words. That's why you listen to people talk. Is you want to be stimulated, and so you're giving people more stuff to take in, because that's like everybody just wants more and more and more. Because once you stop producing, people stop paying attention.
Yeah, I honestly, I never thought about it from that perspective, where it's like if you give a person a larger chunk to chew from, so to speak, it will hopefully engage a person more. And obviously, it's like if they don't care about it, they just won't even look at it, and that's fine. Yeah, no, I like that train of thought. It definitely gives people more to resonate with.
Yeah, there's more to feel coming from Xerxes, from Ben Sears making a comic book, from throwing them like Coliseum made a new music video. Like Ryan's like a huge like film buff, so like they do these really cool music videos. Or like look at Will, his new like solo thing that he's doing, and then like all that kind of thing. And then like me, like, oh, look at Calvin, wrote a poem, blah blah blah. Like who cares? But at least something that's there, and it keeps like I don't want to say the brand, but it keeps the name of your band relevant in people's minds.
Yeah.
For when you put out the record, and you want people to be like, oh, Xerxes, they've been doing so much stuff. I bet this record's going to be really good because like they've been all busy everywhere, And I guess that's what I hope from it. It's become like just natural, like to share all of these aspects of what the group collective here is doing. But yeah, mess around and hope it's cool.
And honestly, from you, I mean, I'm speaking about it as a 33-year-old man talking to a 22-year-old man, where it's like, that thought process is really mature. And that's kind of what struck me about you guys as well. It's where it's like, theoretically speaking, this is something that you do at a later age, just because you either have a more of a perspective or whatever, you have more life experiences, but it's like the fact that you guys are deliberate about this now is only going to help the art you create more in the future, in my mind. So it's awesome. You have a head start. Way to go, Calvin.
I've always felt pretty good about the head start I get.
Yeah.
Right.
That's awesome. There's a few last things I wanted to hit on before I let you go. Was the idea that you because I know you make mention of it within some of the lyrics of the new record, where it's like the working a crappy job, like you were talking about earlier, like setting yourself up for a touring lifestyle and just working these terrible jobs just to make enough money until the next tour or whatever. Do you kind of feel like the grind, that daily grind, so to speak, even though a job is a job, and no matter what, even if you have a rad job, there's still parts of it that suck. So do you think like being kind of in it from a day-to-day basis helps you be creative, or do you think that the fact that takes away your time from this sort of creative simulation? I don't know if you've had that thought process on like if that detracts or adds to your overall artistic experience, so to speak.
I think it kind of goes both ways. For me right now, I would say it's not helping. I've been bartending 5 nights a week lately, from about 4 o'clock in the afternoon until 2 to 3 in the morning. It's kind of like been kind of depressed, and so it's kind of gotten into a cycle of me waking up around 2 o'clock in the afternoon, going to work, staying at work until about 2:30 in the morning, drinking until 4 at least, and then going to passing out, and then waking up again at 2 o'clock in the afternoon and going back to work. It becomes like a cycle that repeats itself so much, and there's no positive to take from it other than like making a ton of money bartending and then blowing it all on booze. But like it's gotten to a point where like I've missed band practice before just because they're planning on practicing, and I'm not even by my phone the entire time that we're texting like what time should we practice and everything. And so like the morning comes that they're all ready to practice, and I'm asleep until way after in the afternoon, So that's not helping, and it's just not helping my creative energy either at the moment. And
Sure.
It's something that I'm working on. But like I think I could say with jobs I had before that were like actual just like shitty jobs that I was there from like 11 o'clock in the morning until 10 o'clock at night. At least then I was reading or writing from like 10:30 until 1 to 2 or something like that. But lately it's been different for whatever reason.
Yeah.
Mostly depression, I think.
Sure. No, I mean, it's a valid point. I mean, I know that you've spoken about it openly in the past, depression, but then also a severe anxiety around like driving and stuff like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, and you obviously mentioned earlier, that you've gone to a therapist before. Is it one of those things that the depression and anxiety has always been has it always existed in your life, or has that manifested itself because of other circumstances?
It's one of those things where it's always kind of been that way. The cycle of anxiety leading to whatever else, like me doing something wrong, leading to depression for doing something wrong or not doing anything at all when I should have done something, kind of thing. I'm a pretty anxious guy. My mind kind of goes at 100 miles per hour sometimes. There's good reasons to be anxious, and then there's bad reasons to be anxious, and then there's good ways to be anxious and bad ways to be anxious. But a lot of times, for me, it's not a positive thing, and it ends in just kind of like a asking like why am I even here? What am I even doing? Like this doesn't even matter. I should just stop. I'm stupid. I fucking suck. Like that kind of thing. It turns into a lot of self-loathing. And that's just kind of how it's been, like, since I failed a math class, like, just because, like, didn't feel like I could do it because I was so anxious about it. And then all of a sudden I have an F, and then I hate myself because I suck at doing stuff. It's just, it's always been like that. And I work on it, but, when you were going to therapy, was that something that you were specifically working on, like the depression, or was that just, was that something that you were... It was kind of like a family therapy thing. The like problems in school led to problems at home, led to problems in my brain, and then so on and so forth. So originally, like me and I went to therapy because me and my mom like hate each other's guts.
Got it.
And so then it kind of got to, well, let's work on you for a second, Calvin. What's going on with you, like separate from your mother's relationship with you and that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, it was discussed. I'm the kind of person where like once me and my mom were getting along and everything was hunky-dory, I was like, all right, I don't want to do this anymore. I don't want to talk about my feelings to this person anymore. Can we just not do this? And I'm going to write some poetry and maybe that'll work. You know?
Right.
Because I believe in like artistic catharsis more than anything else, which is pretty much why I love going on tour most of all, is because I get to play a show and release that every single night. Because otherwise it builds up really bad.
Yeah. So touring,
which is kind of where I'm at now.
You want to get out there because that's your cathartic moment
mm-hmm.
that you're able to repeat on a nightly basis.
Yeah, and that's where I feel the most natural expending my emotional energy, you know?
Sure. And so is your relationship with both of your parents now pretty solid, or is it one of those things that they look at what you're doing with your life as far as the art is concerned and are just like, oh, Calvin, what are you doing?
The reason me and my mom hated each other when I was so young is because we're so similar.
Okay.
Like, I think once we came to terms with that, my mom's just kind of in my corner about everything all the time now. Me and her get along great. Like, I get drunk with my mom all the time. And then after my parents got divorced, though, one of the reasons my parents got divorced is because of my dad's alcoholism. And so when they got divorced, he stopped drinking and kind of got really Christian and stuff. And so it kind of, then once I like dropped out of college and everything, me and my dad, I wouldn't say we're estranged at all, but it is like we have to make an effort to see each other and like really talk about stuff and that kind of thing. So like I'm having dinner with my dad tonight, and then we're going to go to a soccer game together, you know,
Sure.
And that'll be fun. And I love my dad, but he's definitely a little more like high strung. He wants me back in college right now. When I dropped out, he like almost killed me.
Right.
But he does support the music thing. It's one of those things where it's like sometimes I don't know if he can make up his mind because he supports the music thing. He always loved punk rock when he was a kid. So to see me doing this, he gets to live vicariously through me and my little brother, because he always loved punk rock and he always wanted to be a baseball player. So he's got two sons doing those things. So that's cool for him, and he's doing good, and so I don't mess with him at all. He does his own thing, I do mine, and we love each other, and that's about all you can ask for.
Yeah. There's
your 20-something kid to your parent. You know?
Yeah, no, there's that healthy respect for the space, and that's positive for both of you, because then you're not just at each other's throats. Sure. So,
yeah.
And not to be like all dad-like on you, but obviously you mentioned the fact that, you know, your father has battled alcoholism and stuff like that. In, you know, in talking about the lifestyle of what you're living now, is it one of those things that like, do you rally against the idea of being like, I don't want to be like my dad, I don't want to be an alcoholic, but then you find some of his sort of self-destructive tendencies within yourself? Like, has that kicked around your head at all?
Yes, I think about that a lot, actually.
Okay.
Like every morning that I wake up, all the mornings I like wake up hungover and feeling like I don't know, whore on a Sunday morning.
Right.
Like that's kind of how I feel sometimes. And
Sure.
and I look back on that and I'm like, yeah, maybe I should cool it out. Like,
Yeah.
I know, like, because my dad tells me all the time, like, you know, just don't drink too much, dude. Like, don't drink and drive, definitely. And like, everything he says to me is very positive, you know, and I take it positively. I understand that he's worried about me. I'm 22 years old and I bartend. You know, that's a recipe for disaster right there.
Right.
So, and I mean, I'm one for consuming recipes of disaster. So I can see where he's coming from there. And it's not necessarily the best stance on it, but I feel like there's a part of me that says, well, I should cool it, stop drinking right now. There's another part of me that's like, you know what, I'm 22 and I'm playing a punk rock band and I am just doing this right now. I'm going with the flow. And this is just kind of how I operate. And it's gotten me into trouble before, but you know, I give myself some leeway, maybe a little too much, but that's kind of how I feel about it. Young and dumb, and this is my time to do this if I'm going to, kind of.
Sure. Yeah. Well, there's definitely, I understand where you're coming from. There's that identity that is created within the context of not only, you know, what happens culturally within the idea of, you know, punk rock and independent music, where it's like, yeah, you're supposed to make the mistakes when you're young. So that's obviously what you feel like you're doing right now. Yeah, no, I see I see where you're coming from. And I mean, it's fun. I mean, from my perspective, where it's like, I've gone through the same thing with my own father. I mean, he's passed away now. He passed away a few years ago, but he was basically, he was a secret alcoholic, where it's like, I would see him consuming, you know, White Russians like every night. And I would just be I would be like, I think he had like 3 or 4 of those, but he never seemed drunk. But then I myself, like I'm straight edge, and I've always been straight. I mean, straight edge since I was like 15, but it is that idea of like watching someone you love, like, you know, obviously like hurting themselves, and then you also seeing those tendencies within yourself and being like, and having that weird like father-son relationship of like, I don't want to do what you did, Dad, like fuck you, and then like where that sits in your head, you know, it's a tough balance.
It's kind of one of those things where like I kind of agree with what you said there. Like, I never really noticed that my dad had a drinking problem until he told me himself that he had a drinking problem, was going to AA and that kind of thing. And I was like, you know what? That's right. You did drink like a ton of beers every night. And I just never really thought about it until I started drinking beer and realized that like drinking a ton of beer every night isn't good for you.
Right.
So, but like, it's one of those things where sadly I've been the one in my family that always displayed this self-destructive tendencies. And I live with my older brother, and he could even tell you, like, yeah, sometimes Calvin really goes overboard. There's like a weird thing. It's just kind of one of my things where like, I just sometimes lose control completely. And not because I'm drinking, but like just emotionally lose control completely, which like sometimes that leads to drinking too much or like taking drugs or something like that, or just like having random sex with a person just because I can't even stop myself, you know?
Right.
And those are all like just kind of self-destructive things that I don't know why I do to myself. And I sometimes wish I could even stop, but it's just kind of like, this is just the guy I am right now. I need to get this out of my system, you know?
Yeah. Well, no, I mean, I think ultimately the biggest thing that, you know, in hearing the way that you're describing it is the fact that, you know, you are a very self-aware person. And the fact that it's like as long as there's that balance of where it's like, you obviously don't go too deep down the rabbit hole, so to speak, where it's like, you know, you feel like no one can kind of pull you out of there, including yourself. Like that's when it gets, you know, that's when you watch, you know, people basically become, you know, whatever, functional alcoholics for, you know, 40 years of their life or whatever.
That's just that's when you start just killing yourself slowly, you know?
Yeah, no, for sure. You know, the last thing I want to hit on was the fact that it's like you, the idea, especially like we were talking about earlier in regards to the distinct focus and vision of Xerxes, like moving forward, it is one of those things, and I've had discussions with people on this podcast before where it's like, you know, you and the rest of the band have a very specific vision that you want to get out there. Obviously, once you put art out into the world, it's not your own anymore. Other people are going to do whatever they want with it. Has it been a weird relationship for you interacting with people that, you know, have these expectations of like who you are and what you do based off of what you've put out there, or has it been a positive experience for you to have those interactions with people?
I'd say it's more positive than anything else. I don't know. I don't know. I still haven't really been able to peg what people take away from this. I think it's a positive thing when somebody says that, like, listening to a song we wrote has helped them in any way, you know, or like that they can kind of, for whatever reason, they can relate to it. And I understand that in the way of, like, especially on this new record, like, things on this record are really close to and very personal to me. But I also see how somebody could see their own life in my words, which is a positive thing. That's what we all listen to music for. And so I don't really take it in any negative connotation where somebody says like, yeah, like that was totally relevant to this time in my life, blah, blah. I'm not like, yeah, well, fuck you. That was my life, not yours, you know, because it is everybody's music once it's out there. So I don't know. It's as long as people are getting something from it, I am happy. You know, that's the reason it's there. That's the reason I did it. Not just for me. Otherwise, we could just have band practice every afternoon and I would be fine. I need to share it with somebody else for it to really have relevance, and I need to share it with strangers for it to actually have relevance.
Right, right.
So yeah, it's all part of the process for like even my personal emotional standing in this universe is to have somebody relate to what I'm saying, even if they don't necessarily know the full story from my mouth, you know?
Yeah.
Like they just heard the lyrics and thought, you know, that makes sense. That happened in my life too, you know?
No, that's a very positive way of looking at it. And I think that's you know, it's a lesson that can be learned about anything that you're putting out in the world, as long as it's up for discussion and people are willing to take it in, then that's awesome. That's a great place to start, you know? Well, Calvin, I really, really appreciate opening up and chatting with you and hanging out. It's been enjoyable.
No problem, man.
I hope you've enjoyed it yourself as well.
Yeah, great.
Sweet, dude. So there you go. That is Calvin. Like I said, Xerxes has a new record out, making all the rounds, touring. See them live. I highly recommend it. They are always energetic. That was a very fun conversation. And like I said, I teased a little bit earlier, but towards the end of the show, I got a little dad-like. And I guess that's obviously my nature because I am a father now. But just the sort of reflection where it's like, you know, I held up the mirror to him where I was like, yo, are you sure you want to be doing this to yourself? Like working at a bar and dealing with alcoholism when you're in your early 20s? I appreciated his honest response to that, and it was cool to have that engagement because I've never really felt the need to, I guess, interject my own sort of values on another person, or sort of, you know, that person that has a perspective on an issue. But anyways, regardless, thank you so much, Calvin. And the producer, as always, is Tom Richfield. I think I need to buy him some new internet because we've been having all of these sending files back and forth. The UK, what's up? How about you have faster internet? Or maybe I just need to work on Tom's internet. So anyways, Tom Richfield, as always, a gentleman and a scholar. And I'll be able to see him in December, so that's always exciting. And then propertyofzach.com, 100wordspodcast.com. Next episode is such a special episode. I am absolutely thrilled in sharing this with you. It is going to be, I'm just so excited about it. Basically, the month of November, strap in. You're going to be hearing so much rad stuff. So until next week, be safe, everybody.